Hello. So today we're going to be talking about the imposter syndrome. Many of us that feels that we didn't earn our accomplishments and that our ideas and skills don't really deserve the attention of others. Now, it's really funny because Einstein actually suffered from the imposter syndrome, and he actually called himself an involuntary swindler. And that is for him because his work did not deserve all the attention and the merit that it was actually getting from everyone. Now, so here we're talking a bit about theory. The first psychologist to have coined the term imposter syndrome was actually Pauline Rose Clance, and she portrayed it and described it as a unwarranted sense of insecurity. Even though a person does a great job or has amazing grades, they don't believe that they actually deserve, for example, their spot at that university. They think it's actually by mistake that they got accepted by that prestigious university. So it's like whatever they accomplish and whatever they do, they don't deserve it. It's or luck or because they have worked very, very hard and for many, many hours, and they don't believe in their capacity. And usually having the imposter syndrome is the inability to actually feel the success from inside of us, to internalize the success. And we always say that if we're successful, it's because of things in our environment and it's not because of our own capacities or capabilities. So there is different names actually for the imposter syndrome, which is imposter phenomenon, imposter experience, imposter syndrome. And so in the beginning, they used to actually think that imposter syndrome was only for professional women. And with the latest studies and studies that have been done in 2022, for example, they have shown that 82% of people have experienced imposter syndrome at a moment in their life or still experiencing it. And other studies shows that 70% of successful people have actually experienced imposter syndrome. That's kind of crazy, right? And then there's that thing going on in that mindset that, well, maybe it's because of that they became successful. And then you go into that kind of like vicious circle. It's really having the ability to internalize our success, to believe that we deserve our success, to believe that we do have the tools and the intelligence and the smartness to be able to succeed in our life, and not putting it on luck or on hard work, but, like really believing in yourself. Now, anyone who fails, as I said earlier, to internalize their success, they are going to feel like an imposter. They're going to feel like a fraud. People who are highly skilled, they imagine that everyone is just as skilled as them, and they can spiral into that feeling that they don't deserve the accolades or opportunities over other people. If they had this position, it's not because they deserve it, but because they got lucky, and therefore they're unworthy of that opportunity that is given to them. Now, everyone can be susceptible to pluralistic ignorance, which is actually a phenomenon where we doubt ourselves privately, but we believe we are alone in this thinking process, that we are the only ones that think that, we're doubting ourselves. And because no one else actually talks about their doubts, right? Everybody keeps it for them, and they internalize that thing and they don't express it. So this is what we call pluralistic ignorance. Now, imposter syndrome stops people from sharing their ideas or applying to jobs or a program. People fear, if they ask about their performance, that actually their reality is going to be revealed, or their belief is going to be true, you know. And even when you give them a positive feedback, they actually doubt that feedback. They don't believe that positive feedback. So imposter syndrome, or imposter phenomenon, is the intense feeling that anything achieved is underrated, and there is an internalized fear of being exposed as a phony or a fraud, and this causes distress. It causes maladaptive behaviors. So I'll just give you an example. If you worked several nights to do a project without sleeping, and you did a great project, well, you never really believe that it was great, but you know, kind of like a good project, you're not going to be, you're going to say it's because I have done so many overnights, and this is the reason why I was able to succeed. It's not in your capacities, it's because of the hard work that you put in. So next time there's another project that comes along, well, actually, you're going to do all those overnights, because in your belief, the only way that you have accomplished to finish that project was actually by doing those overnights. Now, people with imposter syndrome constantly experience self-doubt. And even in the area that they excel in, they don't believe that they can excel in something. You know, they always have self-doubt. They always say, something is missing. I need to know more. And we will see the different types of imposter syndrome. It may manifest as negative self-talk, you're not smart enough, anyways, you can't do it, look, you didn't do it from the first time, you're such a loser, these kind of self-talk. Now, anxiety and depression are often associated with the imposter syndrome. Now, one thing that is important to know is that imposter syndrome is not a mental illness. It's not in the DSM-5. There's no diagnosis for it, but there is a comorbidity when it comes to anxiety and depression. You know, they're often associated with it. Now, there can be a feeling of restlessness and nervousness. And it has a high link to perfectionism. First, perfectionism. Second, as well, the social content. Now, people who have professionalistic traits do exhibit a lot the imposter syndrome. Okay, so there are hidden self-beliefs around the success or competency, and this is why they have unrealistic expectations about their beliefs. And these can go such as, I should know everything, I should get it right from the first time, I would never make a mistake, I would never be confused, I could never ask for help. Because even then, when they ask for help, for example, to do something, they don't believe that they did it. It's because they asked for help. That's why they were able to achieve what they wanted to do, or the task at hand, you know, so they don't feel that they did it. It's because they got the help. That's why they were able to do it. They only focus on their mistakes. So if you feel that you have the imposter syndrome, maybe you can relate to some of these. Now, when I say they, I'm talking about people in general. I can personally share with you that at a certain time, I did have the imposter syndrome. I do battle with it from time to time, in the sense that, you know, in the beginning, when I just graduated and I started working as a psychologist, as a therapist, it was like I felt that I didn't know enough, that I needed to know more. You know, I felt that no matter how much I knew, I couldn't start working. I always had to take more and more and more certificates, get more degrees. And then I just remember once I had one of my teachers, she actually looked at me and she's like, Hala, just start. You have everything. Just start. Even I remember when I was doing my training, I was kind of worried, would I ever be able, you know, and would I do it right? And again, the person that I was doing my internship under just looked at me and is like, Hala, you have the know-how, just start. And then, you know, bit by bit, you will have more and more experience, more and more knowledge. Don't expect to know everything, because it's impossible to know everything in the field of psychology, but start because you're already good enough, you know. So I had to battle, and I did start, and I'm doing what I'm doing today, being a holistic psychologist and doing these lives and doing a masterclass. And it's because I had to overcome that imposter syndrome that I had. So usually they only focus on mistakes and not on success and how they could do better. So the reason why I gave you a bit my example is for you to really understand this more. You know, I would be looking at what is missing, or maybe I did a mistake here or there, and that was the intense focus. And this is what usually a lot of people do when they have the imposter syndrome. Now, there's 5 types of there's 5 types of imposter syndrome. There's the perfectionist, so never satisfied with his work or her work. You believe, and I will use the pronoun you now, you believe that you could always do better. You focus on your flaws, which leads to pressure and higher the amount of anxiety. And the perfectionist traits make you believe that you're not as good as you may think you are. And usually with this trait, and I will show you a chart in a bit that shows you a bit how the imposter syndrome moves forward, or even the perfectionist, right? It's or they procrastinate because they have to do everything perfect. Everything needs to be perfect, so they don't start because that worry of things need to be perfect. Everything needs to be perfect. And on the other side, it's really overworking, overcompensating, overworking to make everything perfect. And that can very much lead to burnout. Now, the perfectionists do have a tendency to burn out because they overwhelm themselves so much. Then the second one is the superhero, right? Superwoman, Superman. They feel inadequate. They push themselves to work as hard as possible. They measure their competence based on how many things they can juggle and excel at, you know, and when they fall short, it leads them to shame. They believe that they should be able to handle everything. And that's kind of like an unrealistic belief, right? We can't juggle everything perfectly in the same time. And this is why usually they will tell you to focus on one thing at a time and not on so many things. And they believe that they must work very hard to reach the highest levels of achievement possible. So that a lot of pressure as well, right? A lot of anxiety, feeling anxious. Then the third one is the expert. The expert tries to learn more and is never satisfied with the level of understanding. And I think I fell under that category. Highly skilled, but underrates their expertise. Their primary concern is what and how much they can do. You know, the minor lack of knowledge creates a feeling of shame and failure. In my case, it was like, or I'm not going to say in my case, because I think that, you know, sometimes as well, it's not just about fear of shame and failure. Failure, yes, not to be able to do the job well enough or be good enough in the job, and failing at being able to provide or to do the task properly as it's supposed to be. Might not know all that needs to be known, or if not, for them, they haven't mastered yet every step of the process. And all of that just makes them feel that they are fraudulent, that they are phonies. Have the natural genius. So the natural genius set lofty goals for themselves. They feel crushed if they do not succeed on the first trial, may feel as a fraud because they don't believe they are naturally intelligent or smart or competent. And then you have the soulist. So the soulist is individualistic. He prefers to work alone. Their self-worth is perceived by how much they're able to produce, by their productivity. They all often reject assistance. And asking for help for them is a sign of weakness. It's a sign of incompetence, you know. And if they ask for help, or they ask, and if you ask them for help, they might doubt themselves, and then if they need to ask for help for someone, it just reflects more and more, you know, that they didn't do it on their own, that they're not competent enough, and it's because you helped them. This is why they reach to where they are. They don't take credit for what they can accomplish and what they can do. Now, what are the characteristics of someone who has the imposter syndrome? Well, it's their inability to realistically assess competence and skills. They attribute success to external factors, for example, luck. They fear that they won't live up to the expectations. Now, I would like to ask, the expectations of who? And maybe then you'll be able to understand that sometimes having that syndrome is not, I want to use the words totally because of that person, but maybe because, so it's basically nature versus nurture. They were nurtured into it, and it's not within their predisposition. They berate their performance. They will, you know, undermine it or give it less importance. They are overachievers, and usually they sabotage their own success because they don't believe in success, so they sabotage it. Their reality, their beliefs become their reality. They self-doubt, and they set very challenging goals and sometimes really inaccessible goals. And when they don't complete it, they are disappointed in themselves for falling short, but they don't actually realize that the goals that they have set are kind of realistic. They're not achievable. They're not accessible, you know. So what is the impact? The impact of the imposter syndrome for some can be a fuel of motivation. You know, it can push them to achieve, it can push them to overcome certain things, but usually it comes at a cost, and it's the cost of feeling anxious all the time. They can work hard and over prepare, and more than necessary sometimes. They make sure that no one finds out. It's like the main focus is to really make sure that no one finds out that they're a fraud, and they believe that they are a fraud. And what happens is that anxiety worsens, and when the feeling of anxiety worsens, it may lead them into a depression. And this is how it has that vicious circle. You know, you may think the only reason that you succeeded was because you stayed up late at night to work on something and rehearsing it. And for example, you made it at the gathering, you have memorized every single detail of every single individual over there, so like that you could have small talk with them, and that idea of that over preparation that allowed you to succeed actually puts more pressure on you to overwork. Now, even when you do something well, you don't believe that it's because of you. You know, the belief doesn't change, and on the contrary, it intensifies. The thought is that it's, you know, what gives me the right to be here? You know, and when you have that feeling that you have that you were able to overcome, let's say, and do the task, it's just a reminder that you are a fraud. It doesn't have the opposite effect where you might think, well, you see, you're able to do it. It's because of your competence. It's because of your intelligence. It's because you have the resources. And yet people who have imposter syndrome don't believe that. It kind of like does the opposite effect, you know. The more that they accomplish, the more that they feel like phonies, the more that they feel like they're a fraud. Now, social anxiety, you receive feedback that you so what happens with social anxiety is that maybe in the past, in your childhood, at any moment, you did a presentation, right? And someone came up to you and told you that you didn't do that good. And so your core belief about yourself is that you're a fraud, you can't do it, you don't believe in yourself enough. And that core belief about yourself is so strong that nothing can change it, even if you have the proof of the opposite. Even if somebody comes to you and tells you, you did amazing, you did great, your thinking process is that you did good because of luck. It's not because you did good, it's because you were lucky. So it starts maybe sometimes with someone telling you that you didn't do good enough, and then you just keep that belief with you, and nothing changes that core belief. It just stays there. It doesn't move. So I'll give you an example. Like you work in a company and they call you by your title. This is an example of how the imposter syndrome doesn't sit with us well. Having imposter syndrome, we don't sit with our accomplishments well. So let's say you're the general manager of a whole region and somebody is calling you and telling you, oh, general manager. You don't feel comfortable with the title because you believe you're a fraud, because you believe that you didn't master the position yet, so you don't deserve the title. Or, for example, you start your own business and you don't like to promote yourself. You don't have the same level of, for example, expertise or experience that others do have. And this is why you feel like a fraud. You feel that, no, I can't advertise myself. I can't advertise my business because I don't have enough knowledge, or I don't have enough of experience, or I don't have enough of, expertise. And I could kind of relate to that when I first opened my practice, and I would have people tell me, why don't you go more on social media? Why don't you go on TVs? Why don't you go on radios? And I'm like, who am I to go on these things? Or who am I to do all of these things? I mean, I need to know more to be able to do it. And that was my imposter syndrome kicking in. Now, what are the signs? And I'm going to read you a couple of questions that could help you to see, maybe it could help you see, do I have imposter syndrome, or am I flirting with it in a way? So do you agonize over the smallest mistakes or flaws in your work? Do you attribute your success to luck and outside factors? Are you sensitive to constructive criticism? Do you feel lucky? You will inevitably be found out as a phony. Do you downplay your own expertise, even in the areas where you're generally more skilled than other people? If you have answered yes to these questions, well, it's most probable that you feel like an imposter, that you feel like a fraud. Now, what are the causes to feel, what are the causes of imposter syndrome? The family upbringing. A lot of time, it reflects the parenting style. Overprotective or controlling parents will create that when they expect too much from the child, or they overprotect them. When there's a very high expectation from the child will create perfectionism and the perfectionist traits, and most of the time can lead to the imposter syndrome. As well, when there's high level of conflicts at home and there's a low amount of support, a lot of times the child will create or build the imposter syndrome within themselves. Transition as well can be a cause, a trigger. So new work or new schools, the new role can trigger, you know, more common when people, it's more common when people go through transitions. This is where the imposter syndrome can kind of like sneak in. And then you have the personalities, right? If they have low self-efficacy. So self-efficacy is they don't believe in their ability to deal with a situation, or perfectionism. They may think that there's a perfect script or the perfect thing to say, and then they have trouble to ask for help. They procrastinate due to their high standards. Their standards are so high, almost sometimes unachievable for just anyone. And you know, so that as well has to do with personality. Social anxiety. Now, something that is very important to mention is that people who have imposter syndrome can have social anxiety, and socially anxious people can have imposter syndrome, but it does not mean that if you have this, then you have to have that. They can overlap, but it's not the all or nothing, you know. It can be there, it cannot be there. There's some people who can have social anxiety but don't feel the imposter syndrome. So the way that it overlaps is because they're scared of being discovered again as a fraud in social settings. And social anxiety can be the fuel to the imposter syndrome. But as I said, it does not mean that everyone that has it, that has imposter syndrome, will have social anxiety. So interesting questions to ask yourself when it comes, when it has to do with the imposter syndrome, and to really see and to kind of challenge, if you want, in a way, would be like, what are my core beliefs about myself? What do I really believe about myself? You know, not good enough, not smart enough, slow, or, you know, people are better. Usually the comparison as well intensifies it. Another core belief could be, must I be perfect for others to approve of me? And do I believe that I am worthy of love the way that I am, or as I am? The way you answer to these questions can very much be the reason of the imposter syndrome. If I don't believe that I am worthy of love the way that I am, then I will always feel that I am not good enough. And then I will feel that I'm a fraud. How to overcome the imposter syndrome? Well, realize something, that when you say should, always, and never, just take a pause, stop for a moment, and challenge them. I always need to do this. Really? Do you always need to do it? Or sometimes can you do it a bit differently? So already challenging, you know, that should, always, never, that's a first step. Have access to your abilities. Realize what are your abilities, what you can do. Collect and revisit positive feedback. Like really put them in front of you, the feedback. Like, for example, when a teacher said, great job, or when your boss said, oh, amazing, just revisit them. Look at these positive feedback and reframe your thoughts. You know, it's like acknowledge your thoughts, challenge them, and change your perspective. Now, the imposter syndrome might never totally 100% go away, but with these things, you can manage it better. You can know how to deal with it better, you know, handle it better. So acknowledge your thoughts and challenge and change your perspective. It's very important, so that the reframing your thoughts, changing your perspective. You see it as luck and then just reframe. No, I worked hard. I made it happen. I deserve this. I am worthy. Talking about it as well helps a lot. When you talk to people around you, when you talk to others about this, and you will see that at the end of the day, you're not the only one. You're not the only person that is sharing these feelings. Focus on others that are in the same situation as you. You know, maybe you might see that there's somebody else around you that has the feeling of an imposter syndrome, and help him and bring in him and help him, and you'll see it will help you. And stop comparing yourselves to others. There's certain things that you can do that others can't do, and there's things that others can do but you can't do. So when we feel that we have the imposter syndrome, it's important to you know, not bash ourselves. And the use of social media moderately, this one, I cannot emphasize on it enough, because when we look at people's life on social media, we think that their life is perfect, that they're perfect, that everything is amazing. But we need to remind ourselves, this is what they are showing, but that's not the reality. It's like us. Do you usually put pictures of you down or depressed, or do you put pictures of you when you're having a great time and when everything is perfect? You know, once, I don't remember where I was in Lebanon, and I was out, and this table right behind us, right? So there were so many people and everything. They wanted to take a picture. A couple of minutes before, everybody was just sitting on the couch, and they were like, and looking at their phones and scrolling and everything. And then they're like, oh, picture time. And you see everybody going, they're having like the time of their life. That picture that they posted, it looked like they had the time of their life. But a couple of seconds earlier, they were sitting and like, and you know what? A couple of seconds after the picture, they went back to that behavior. So really, use social media moderately, and don't believe everything that you see on social media. And refuse to let it hold you back. Just fight that. Don't let it hold you back. By you holding yourself back, you're not allowing yourself to be able to accomplish so many other amazing things, because you're so focused and you're almost burned out on that, you know. And finding other ways, it's like, no, sorry, that's it. This is how it's supposed to be. Let go of the imposter syndrome. Free yourself from it, or challenge it at least when it comes up. Don't allow it to control you and have power over you if you have it. And if you know someone who has it, then go and give them these advice and tell them, you know, they're the only ones who are not believing in themselves. So if you feel like an imposter, remember you have some degree of success in your life, that you attributed it to luck instead of attributing it to yourself. And when that happens, reframe and turn that feeling, you know, it's luck, turn it and reframe it into gratitude, into a feeling of gratitude. And this will help you to at least overcome or control better. Now, I would like to share with you my screen, and this is just to show you how the imposter syndrome kind of works. I'm just figuring out where to share my screen. Just a second. I don't know why I can't see it. Ah, there it is. Okay. So there it is. Here you go. So here it is. Right? So that is how it goes. So first, there is the anxiety, the self-doubt, the worry. Okay. So achievement related to task. And here you have the anxiety, the self-doubt, the worry. Now, it can go two ways. Or towards over preparation, spending hours and hours and hours and weeks, maybe even on preparing it, or procrastination. Now, most of the time, as I said, the perfectionist, they might go towards procrastination because it's like, it's never going to be perfect. So they tend to like postpone it. And this is something that I would mention, and I will do a live about procrastination. It's not the opposite of perfectionism. It's actually this on the same side of the coin. So then the accomplishment, the feeling of relief, you have the positive feedback, they discount the positive feedback. Now, those who over prepare will actually say it's the effort. And those who procrastinate will say it's luck. They won't say it's them. They won't believe it's their capacities, their capabilities of accomplishing the task. It's or that extra effort, and they go on with the belief that I have to do that extra effort, or it's the luck. And then what happens? Perceived fraudulent. So you see, even after they have accomplished and they get the positive feedback, they discount the positive feedback, they disregard it, and it only reinforces their belief of being perceived as fraudulent. And it's increased self-doubt. It can lead to depression and intensify the feeling of anxiety, and then the achievement of the related task. So basically, this is a bit how imposter syndrome works or functions. So here you go. I hope that you enjoy today's live. I hope that you enjoyed today's topic, and I will see you next week. Thank you very much for joining, and take care.